is presenting this webinar today. Our work is based on 1 Peter 4:10, which says, like good stewards of the manifold grace of God, serve one another with whatever gift each of you has received. So our work is ministry. It's about educating people about stewardship, about being a conduit for God's blessings that we've been given, and learning how we can discern God's will for us to share those blessings with the world. Church Development was founded in 1992, and we've raised millions of dollars for hundreds of churches. And our method is based in stewardship, education, and discernment, and community building. And we see that works really well as a way to grow a culture of generosity rather than making hard asks that are pressuring people into giving money, and that often doesn't have a very good effect on people's spiritual lives. So as I'm just watching, I think we're getting kind of close to people having joined us. So if you would like to have access to these slides, there will be an email that goes out at the end of, I think actually tomorrow about this time, and you'll receive a link to the recorded webinar and to the slides that you can share with anybody that wasn't able to make it today or for your reference later. So introducing Dennis Green, President of Church Development, and our lead presenter today. Dennis, you want to introduce yourself and share what we're going to be learning today?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It is a pleasure to be here, but the real star of the show is my friend Kirby Gould, who has decades of experience. Even though she's only around 30 years old, she has about 30 years of experience in the field. So I'm very happy that she is here, and she is really an expert in this. I've participated in many planned giving programs, but boy, I'm so happy to have Kirby as a friend and as a professional resource. So good morning, Kirby.
Good morning, Dennis. How are you?
I am doing super, and I'm just so happy to see that you're here, but you're here from around the world. I see the map behind you. What's that a map of, Kirby?
That is Jamaica. I have been to Jamaica 4 times on a medical mission trip with 2 different groups. And so my office is not very exciting. So every now and then I feel like I want to be back in Jamaica and doing the good work that I've been doing down there with some awesome people.
Oh, that's so cool. That's amazing. You've been there that many times. Well, I know your church, Hillcrest Christian Church. It's an awesome church. And boy, you guys have got so many ministries going on inside and outside. It's really it's a great location and a dynamic pastor, and you got a lot of fun stuff going on.
It's a great, our motto is the church has left the building. And that's that's no truer right now during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We can't worship inside, but we are still, tonight we're going to do a food drive in our parking lot amongst other things that we're doing to really continue being the hands and feet of Jesus out there in the world right now the best we can.
That's cool. And you know, I think of your pastor, Neil Engel, as a movie star. And I think he thinks of himself as a movie star too. Am I right?
Oh sure. If he could be on the Andy Griffith show.
That's exactly right. That's right.
He would be in heaven.
he's much better looking than Barney Fife, but
but he's got the car.
He's got the car. Oh. Anyway, Kirby, thanks a million. So as we go, we will present to you just a ton of information. A lot of it is based in behavioral research. I'm a big fan of this chap who got a Nobel Prize for his work. So we're based in faith and reason, scripture and science. And I would recommend to any of you to read this book. It only took me 6 months to get through the 500 pages. It's painful, but boy, it gives us a lot of insight in how people make economic decisions. And for almost all of us, you know, almost nobody does a planned giving effort in their church. And Kirby, I would welcome your opinion, but my experience is that fear is the main barrier to having a successful planned giving program in a church. People think they need to be an expert in all the legal and financial ins and outs of estate planning. That's my perception. What is your perception why most churches do not have an estate planning fundraising effort?
I think there's some very concrete ones. One is obviously the idea we don't like to talk about money in church.
Right.
So we really kind of have to get over that that fear that we know that money drives mission,
Yeah.
and a successful stewardship program such as church development offers in many wonderful ways. We just look at this as another way of giving, that kind of that pocket, giving from the annual fund or giving to a capital campaign, but giving from the ultimate pocket that we all have the opportunity to do so from. So it's really not, you don't have to be a whiz in all the financial and legal expertise, because ultimately a donor is going to make a decision with his or her financial advisor. So
Right.
that you need to have all the, the ins and outs of a league trust or a charitable annuity, all those things. But what you're trying to do is just motivate people to think about their giving once they're gone from this earthly life, which is more or less what planned giving is doing, is trying to bring gifts at the time of a person's passing. So we've discovered through my organization, the Christian Church Foundation, that sort of like giving begets giving. If you can have some sort of legacy partner organization, or just to name and identify the people that have said, yes, I have left the church in my will. Wonderful. Would you be willing to share your passion with someone else? Would you invite people into your home and talk about that? And then the church can say, when you die, this is what we're going to do with this gift, and to show the many benefits that come once a person does pass. So to relationship building, it's not the techie stuff that you have to know, but just developing those relationships within the congregation.
That's fantastic. And I so value your opinion, because you are an expert and you've been there and done that for decades. I want to pull out one little quote. You said giving begets further giving. That's totally our experience. So when we do a capital campaign, remember we've done more than 200 of these, usually annual giving goes up by 10%. And then a year later, we start a planned giving program, and we usually raise as much in planned giving commitments as we did in the capital campaign. So that's normally 2 to 3 times annual giving. So you just think about mentally, have this, how much can we raise in our church? You can probably raise 3 times annual giving in commitments every year. So do it. Do an estate planning, planned giving program. Annual giving will go up as well. Now, it's real key that you start with the why, not just Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, which is very true. But remember the popular TED Talk, Simon Sinek, start with the why. Why is this church important, both for the individual, and we're serving God, and for the community. So the why is fairly easy. We've just got to begin there and articulate that. Now, another key thing that Kirby said a moment ago, you don't have to be an expert. You do not have to be a technician, CPA, or an attorney. You have to provide a why. And here is the best why. Do these 3 steps, just like Calvin and Hobbes there. Publicize a deadline, thank people for remembering the church and their estate plans, and provide a benefit. And we think the best one is a fun social meal that is a gratitude event. So cut and paste this announcement into your Sunday bulletin starting today, okay? Run it every week up until September 1. You're invited to a steak dinner gratitude event that the Legacy Society is serving on September 15th. So contact the office by September 1 if you have remembered the church in your estate plans to arrange an invitation. So we're going to state clearly, you're only invited if you've remembered the church in your estate plan. So literally, one spouse will elbow the other and say, I want to go to this, make it happen. That's the motivation, and it's a deadline. And it corresponds with the number 1 reason people don't have an estate plan, procrastination. So let's give them a deadline. So here's what we're going to cover. What is planned giving? Who gives and how much? When do people give? How to set up a planned giving program in your church. What to not do, which is, Kirby's already told you that. What's the single key to success? And you may ask Kirby questions right now. You have a Q&A tab in the stripe on your screen. So it's either going to be at the top or the bottom, and you have a Q&A tab. And plus we have Meredith and Stephanie who are also fielding questions. So please feel free to interrupt as we go. And it'll be more interesting if you ask questions, okay? All right, so here's a quick definition of what is planned giving. In essence, it is a gift through one's estate to a charity. It could be as simple as a bequest. A more sophisticated maneuver would be a distribution from a trust, a TOD or POD on a checking account or an investment account. You could assign a charity to be the beneficiary of an insurance policy or the recipient of an IRA. But a real important understanding here is over 90% of all wealth is held in non-cash assets. So these are generally considered a non-cash gift. So it's easy for the donor because it doesn't require money out of their pocket to make an enormous impact on their church. All right, Kirby, now you tell the folks, what have I left out of this definition?
Everything is very much the way that it would line up. I would say from a marketing perspective, and maybe you'll talk about this a little bit later, but IRA and retirement assets is absolutely the best way to talk to people about giving because of the tax savings with the Secure Act that passed in 2019. The heirs are going to be taxed at a higher rate, and we can get into all those details, but really right now the vast majority of planned gifts come from a bequest. I think over time that will shift to more beneficiary designations, but a simple bequest in a will is really right now where most of the gifts are coming from. I'd also say that sometimes a planned gift may or may not come from an estate. I just got done with a gift that a lady said, you know, you were in my will, but I want to see my money work now. And I want to forward my gift to you so I can get that scholarship fund set up for my local church. So don't be surprised if somebody says, oh yeah, I have you in my will. And then a year or two later say, you know, I just want to give this gift now. I want to see the church really have a benefit from this gift while I'm still living. So yeah, everything you've listed there, you know, under real estate, I would add like farms, other kinds of houses, I mean, all those various forms of real estate. So
what you said happened to me exactly at South Broadland Presbyterian Church. We had a gentleman give two gifts, a capital campaign gift, and then he put us in the will. And then it was a year later, he said, you know, why don't I just give that asset to you now because I want the new boiler now. And so we're very happily accepted that. Now, the bottom line on this slide is a ministry. How could planned giving be a ministry? Well, if you do not have an estate plan, it is a disaster, okay? The state you live in has a plan for you. It is a prescribed formula, and it's probably not what you want. Furthermore, if your assets go into probate, it's going to take a long time to get settled. Your laundry is aired to the public, and it could be incredibly expensive. Kirby, am I right? What would you add?
Yes, all the above. What you may think would be a simple estate, one that I'm remembering is everything was in order, but then the executor ended up being ill and in the hospital and could not execute his duties to take care of the estate. So yeah, there are just so many issues and problems without an estate. Even with a good plan, there still are bumps, but you really need to do all you can to get all your documents together, talk to your family, make sure everybody knows where the passwords are and the important documents. So absolutely.
Okay, now let me throw in another fact that you who are listening need to publicize as part of your estate planning effort, in which you will give away tons of free information. If your constituents, anybody who goes to your church, has a minor child at home, why do they need a will, Kirby, if they have a minor child at home?
Who's going to raise the kids if mom and dad die in a common accident?
Exactly, and that's
all the time.
And that's a horrifying thought to think of, but the will is the document where that is designated. So it is a ministry because you're going to encourage your constituents to get a will, and if they have children at home, they've got to do that right now. That's so important. Now, there's some
Okay, Dennis.
Yes.
Whoop, I'm jumping in. We got a question from Katie about the recent changes to tax incentives due to COVID-19, or like Kirby, you mentioned the act that was passed last year, and how that changes donors' motivation for giving. And so if we could just maybe touch on that throughout the webinar, and Katie wants to know specifically, is there something that we should be sending to donors about the changes, or information that's relevant to those changes? So if you could speak to that.
All right, I want Kirby to answer that, but I want to precede it with tax benefits are not the driving reason people are going to remember the church and their estate plan. The number one reason is they love the church. That's the why. Okay, now there are tax benefits. If somebody's thinking rationally, they are going to be more generous because the tax benefits are spectacular. So Kirby, please take a minute to answer her question.
Yeah, well, there's two very distinct legislation. The Succes Act, which was passed in December, which allows or makes IRA gifts, IRA distributions to children have to fast forward for 10 years. Giving more from retirement assets is a good plan because of the Succes Act. But then all of a sudden we have the CARES Act, which is saying you don't have to make a distribution during 2020. But this gift that I just received from this donor, she says, I know I don't have to get rid of this money, but I want to get rid of this money. And so for her, the tax was not the motivation, but it was definitely her desire to do something good. So I would say at the very least to do with donors is just send them a little summary of the Succes Act or the CARES Act, just an understanding, but not to make that the incentive for trying to get a gift. I just say just more of a stewardship. You know, we want you to know this, and contact your professional advisor for more information, something like that.
Yeah, and that's about all you got to do. So from here to forward, I'm going to propose that you create a legacy committee in your church, and this is the kind of thing they would discuss. How do we share information? What information do we share? I'd like to see something in your bulletin every single Sunday. Okay, remember the church in your estate plan. Contact this person to find out more. Okay, now let me shift from the spiritual to the crass. Okay, 60% of the population dies without an estate plan. Isn't that horrible? Even attorneys. Okay, so this is a statistic from AARP. I trust this. In the old days, it used to be 70%, so we're getting better. Now, on the positive side, anybody who does any financial planning, their financial planner will force an estate plan upon them. You take a Dave Ramsey class, that's one of the chapters. It's very important. Now for you as a church, you will benefit enormously. The average bequest, according to the Chronicle of Philanthropy, is $78,000. It's a big gift. So if you encourage this, this will happen to you. Now, the Mid-America Planned Giving Council, I remember attending a workshop there a long time ago, and the statistic the presenter shared with me is that 3% of your population at any given time is ready, willing, and able to make an estate gift. Isn't that interesting? They're in the midst of their estate planning. Now, 14% of estate documents include a bequest. But now you've got to kind of do a little bit of math here. 14% of the 40% who have an estate plan, that means only 8.4% of the population is making an estate gift. That means our market is enormous. 91.6% of your church attendees have not yet created an estate and included a bequest to the church. So this is a spectacular area of growth. And as Kirby said earlier, I would welcome your reflection on this, Kirby, but as Kirby said earlier, giving begets giving. And so let us encourage people to give in this way, because according to the planned giving research, their annual giving will increase after they've made an estate gift as well. So Kirby, are you comfortable with the statistics I'm tossing about here?
Absolutely. Yeah, they all are very much in line with what is reflective in the charitable giving community for sure. And just because the average is 78,000, but your best gifts are going to come from people who just love your organization, love your church, and they're going to give what would be considered a widow's mite. And every gift is important, and the encouragement of those gifts is across every demographic that you have within a church.
So it is a benefit to the person. And we do, I mean, the secular research says the more generous you are, the closer you feel your relationship with God is. And the scientists even tell us that it is reflected, they call it genome expression. So we know that the T cell production in your immune system increases the more generous you are. And I'm fascinated by that. I love it when science, faith and reason, when those two things intersect. I just love that. All right, so now I'd like to share a couple other statistics. When do people make the decision to make an estate gift to their church? Earlier we talked about please get a will if you have kids at home, but people tend to get serious about making an estate gift to their church when they're a little bit older. My experience is above the age of 55. What's your experience, Kirby?
The only research I've heard, it came from another organization, that they say the average bequest is made at the age of 47. To me, that just seems a little young.
Yeah.
Maybe once people start doing wills and start asking those questions, and the question gets raised more and more the older they get.
Mm-hmm. So in a way, I think of planned giving as if it was forestry. We're planting seeds now that may not bloom for many, many years. However, Mid-America Planned Giving Program, I remember a shocking statistic that said those organizations, and they were largely addressing universities who are the best at fundraising. Those organizations that have a well-funded, fully staffed planned giving program staffed by professionals generate more per year in cash from estate gifts that have matriculated. So this is after 7 years, than they do in their annual giving programs. Isn't that interesting? Just looking back at my history, almost no church has a well-funded, well-established planned giving program, but boy, every university does. I've been hearing from my college for a long time. Absolutely. Now, what's it cost to create a will? LegalZoom might cost you $100 if you want to do it yourself, but Investopedia says it's going to be around $900. Does that sound right to you, Kirby?
Yeah, I'll say when my husband and I got our wills updated, it was a little bit more than that, which was kind of, I think our attorney wanted us to do a trust will, so I think he charged us a little more. But I think you can find good attorneys here in this area that could do it at that amount.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we did our original cost, us the next bullet. The average cost nationally is $2,500, but ours only costs $1,200. Maybe we have a more simple estate, but I mean, depending on the complexity of your estate will dictate that cost of the trust. A simple one could be maybe under 1,000, but the average is going to be 2,500, and maybe it's 4,000. But there are a huge number of benefits. It is private. It is seamless. It avoids probate. You have to appoint trustees and contingent trustees. But boy, it's just the best. Am I right, Kirby, that trust is the best?
I think it just depends on the individual. I can't really, pass judgment on which is the best but there is a lot of simplicity to having it. It's more complicated, but it does pass in a much more efficient manner, especially with people who have varied assets. Maybe they own property in different states and such.
Mm-hmm. Let me pause for a moment and respond to a question from Clifford. Has the shutdown affected planned giving programs? I would give a twofold answer, and then I'll ask your opinion, Kirby. Yes, we can't visit people, and that's the key. We can't have events. You want to have a gratitude event every year. You want to visit people. You want to share information. So yes, it has slowed us down. However, people are still proceeding in creating estate plans, whether it's a will or trust or another instrument. Kirby, what's your response?
Well, there was an excellent article in the Plain Giving Today that I just read about 20 different stewardship tax things you can do right now with all of your Plain Giving donors. I mean, just staying in touch. I just started down my list and started calling people. How are you doing? What can I do for you? And actually, that's how my $50,000 gift came out, because I actually just picked up the phone and talked to someone. On the more ghoulish side, because of death is kind of in the news a lot with the COVID situation, maybe people are a little more sensitive to their planning. And that's really not the lead line you want to start a conversation with a donor. But people are thinking about it, and
Right.
what they need to do to kind of fast forward some of their planning in the just in case scenario.
Right. So Kirby said very many important things there, but please remember, it's going to happen no matter what the economic conditions are, or social or scientific conditions. People are going to plan out their estates, and the best thing you can do is just be in contact. Kirby said making a phone call helped to stimulate her most recent very generous gift. Human contact is really the most important thing. So when we look at another thing we should look at is, why do people give? And the number one reason is that they love the church. Now, the reason they don't give is procrastination. That's the number one reason. They say, well, we just keep putting it off, so I'll do it later. So when we get our legacy program going in your church, every year we want to have an event with a deadline, because the subconscious only knows 2 times in decision making, either now or not now. So we have to present a now. So we've got to say, now is the time to decide, so that you'll be invited to our gratitude event, which will be fun, and your friends will be there, and there will be some recognition for you. So how does one, well, let me go back. Kirby, would you contribute anything else to insights into why do people?
Absolutely. You're right on target. They love the church, but they don't do it because they don't get around to it.
Right. And me personally, you can share your opinion, but in my opinion, the best ask is to tithe. Would you tithe in your estate plan? So immediately
Yes.
people know that it's 10%. You probably know the statistic, Kirby, but I think the average cash gift, where people designate a cash amount to remember their church, is about 1/10 of if they designate a percentage gift, or if they use the magical terms, the rest, residue, and remainder. Am I right about that?
Yeah. I just had a gift yesterday, a retirement account, 45% to the daughter, 45% to the son, and 10% to the church.
Perfect.
Works like clockwork. And
Yeah.
people understand that. They understand the tithe. They understand 10%.
Yeah.
And they're not making them give away everything to the church. The kids are still going to get plenty.
Right.
But a simple tithe that God has taught us
Right.
can be related also in terms of a legacy gift.
Yeah, that's the key. Make it a 10%. So how do you set up a planned giving program in your church? Well, like anything else, somebody needs to be in charge of it. And if somebody's not in charge, nothing is going to happen. So find a person who's a good planner. They don't have to have a sparkling personality nor be a marketing person, but just maybe somebody who's retired off the church council or retired off the finance committee. It's a very gentle, low stress, not much time requirement. Maybe they meet quarterly, and they're going to rotate around the annual gratitude event. Okay, so we're gonna have a plaque, which everybody who does remember the church in their estate plan is going to have a little bit of brass attached to this lovely little plaque in the foyer. But it's the event that really matters. Now, leading up to the event, we want to share lots of technical information. So at your quarterly events of your legacy committee, you'll find somebody like Kirby, who's an expert from your denomination, an estate planning lawyer, a trust officer, to come in and have a luncheon in which we pay for the food. We invite people, and it's to give away free information. And my experience, having done these workshops for 30 years, it's the easiest thing in the world to get volunteer presenters. You get an estate planning attorney, they'll pay for the food because they hope the participants will then hire them to create their will or their trust. So it is a win-win all the way around. And you can find people who are officially estate planning experts. So this is not complex, nor time-consuming, nor daunting. It is a doable thing. It's all outlined in number 5, the church development book. I think Meredith can tell us. Meredith, did we give that away with this workshop? And if not, just let me or Meredith or Stephanie know, and we'll send you a link so you can get that book. Meredith, did we give that away with the announcement to this workshop?
Yes, the link to the planned giving guide was in the announcements for the webinar, which went out a couple weeks ago and again this morning. There's a link that you can click for an immediate download for that. It's about 30 pages of really detailed information. It gets into the weeds with the charitable trust, bequests, and step-by-step guide, and even a timeline for setting up your planned giving program. So we hope that that's helpful for all of you guys.
Awesome. Now you can also take this presentation, if it's all right with you, Kirby, and you will have a recording of it, and you can present this to your committee once you get that committee going. And I'm not going to volunteer, Kirby, but I'll volunteer. If you're about to start a planned giving effort in your church, we can have a webinar just like this with Q&A with your committee. I'll volunteer to do that. I know that sounds crazy, but I enjoy this subject a lot. It has been my whole career, and it's been a lot of fun. Okay, what to not do. I've made this mistake 100 times, and I get this kind of response. You see those people falling asleep? I've presented lots of workshops on the technical, legal, and financial details of estate planning, like what's the benefits of a Q-tip trust or over a charitable lead trust. Man, if you just say that, my wife's favorite reminder is, she says, Dennis, you know, you can go from 0 to boring in 2.7 seconds. It's not a compliment. So don't do this. But I bet, Kirby, do you see this all the time? I mean, this is my experience. What's your?
Well, and I have to say, guilty as charged. You know, when I started in this, I wanted everybody to know how smart I thought I was, and it is just, you deer in the headlights. They don't want to hear all the details. They can't absorb it all.
Right. So the behavioral economist, he's also a brain scientist, and he says the prefrontal cortex, which processes this technical information, can hold 5 bits of information at a time, whereas our amygdala can hold about 1,000 bits per second. So this gets overwhelmed immediately, and stories stick. I mean, we can all watch a movie for an hour and a half and 2 hours and be enthralled. People can hear a lecture about estate planning and financial and legal technicalities for right at about 30 seconds, and then they just slip into a coma. You know, hospitals could save money on anesthesia. They could just present planned giving workshops. People would be out. So don't do that, okay? All right, so I'm going back up to our original key to success, and we only got a couple more minutes together. And I, again, would like to open the floor for your questions. You have a Q&A tab. In it's either the top or the bottom of your screen. Just rotate your cursor over that and it will pop up and you can ask a question, and Meredith will make sure. And I'll even ask Kirby, what are the most common questions? When we're done with this slide, I'll say, Kirby, what questions have you heard? And then I'd like you, all the listeners, to type in questions in that Q&A tab. So the plan giving key to success, and I say this, so we've done more than 200 capital campaigns. And our desire, if allowed, is to start a planned giving program 12 months after the capital campaign commitment Sunday. Now, one might think that is counterintuitive, having just given a significant gift to the capital campaign. Why would they even make more of a gift through their estate plans? Well, what Kirby said earlier was just so wise and accurate. Giving begets further giving. So what our experience is, we might raise 3 times annual giving in a capital campaign in 3-year pledges. That's kind of our norm. Then 1 year later, we're going to raise the same amount of money in estate planning commitments. So we might raise $2 million in a capital campaign. We're going to get another $2 million in estate gifts. And I remember making this presentation at a church in Colorado, and the pastor was hysterical. Her name was Paula. She's the funniest pastor I ever met. Because a committee member said, well, Dennis, I mean, that's not really the same, because an estate giving commitment doesn't matriculate very soon. It might be 10 or 20 years. I mean, so isn't it irrelevant because they don't matriculate, they don't become cash very soon? What do we do about that? The Paula leans in and says very quietly, well, we could arrange something. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard a pastor say. And I thought she was hysterical, but nobody else got the joke. She was joking. Oh. So anyway, going back to the key to success, as Kirby said earlier, is motivation. It is inspiration. So you begin with, their love of the church. You've got to give a deadline. So the announcement on the bottom half of the slide, please cut and paste that, okay? Just let people know we're going to have a fun gratitude event hosted by the Legacy Committee. It's going to be on the 15th. Please contact the office by the 1st in order to arrange an invitation. So we want to be very clear, you're only invited. And someone, people frequently ask me, well, doesn't that involve just months of torturous negotiations with your lawyer? Well, not really. I mean, designating a beneficiary to a checking account is 30 seconds at your bank. How long, Kirby, what's your experience? If someone wants to designate a beneficiary to a life insurance policy, how long does that take?
Well, just a simple call to your insurance agent, get the correct beneficiary form, make sure it's filled out correctly. I will say that churches need to have their tax ID number at the ready. So when the attorney or the insurance agent calls, you have that to be able to place into the beneficiary form. So it's relatively quick. I mean, a couple of weeks at the most, that I would think that it could happen.
Right. So over a couple of weeks. But for me as the donor, it might just take 15 minutes of my time. Yeah, I make a phone call, I get the material, I sign it, I mail it back. It takes almost no time. So should you do this? My goodness, absolutely. And please do it today, absolutely. All right, now what last question? Before we go on to our next webinar, let me go back up. What other questions, Kirby, do you encounter when you're working with a church? What other challenges do you experience? What's on everybody's mind? Any other questions that we need to answer, Meredith? But before Meredith goes, Kirby, tell me, what other questions are on people's minds when you're in their church helping them create a planned giving effort?
Yeah, I would say, and this is critical, number one is that if you're going to have a successful planned giving program, every single leader in the church has to be able to raise their hand and say, I have the church in my will. Because if the leaders are not willing to, to make this kind of commitment, why should people in the pews do it? So that's kind of the first hurdle we have to get by, is getting the trustees or the stewardship committee and the minister all to be able to check a box that says, yes, the church is in my plans. And then the rest becomes a whole lot easier. But that really is where a lot of energy has to be expended, is in convincing the leaders as to why they need to be the first, just like a capital campaign, Dennis, you know that.
Sure. Yeah.
I chaired the capital campaign at my church, and I made sure that my husband and I were the very first persons to put our pledge commitment in the plate. And this is also very, very true for planned giving success as well.
Yeah. So let's just do the math on what Kirby just said. Okay. So today you're making the decision that you're going to start a planned giving program in your church. Okay. You're going to go to the pastor. You're going to start a committee. You're going to form a committee. You're going to call other leaders who are less active. They've maybe graduated from a leadership position, will be on the legacy committee. And you're going to say to them, one of the things you've got to do is remember the church in your estate plans. Would you be willing to do that? And you can't be on the committee unless you do that. They will all say yes because we all love the church. So yes. Now, then you're going to tell them, we're going to go out to the other members of the board or the council or the committee, whatever your governing body is. And we're going to say to them, everybody needs to remember the church in your estate plan. So you're going to get at least a dozen estate gifts set in motion the first month of the existence of the committee, and do the math based on what the average gift is earlier. You're going to have your first $1 million of commitment in motion right out of the chute. So is that worthwhile? Does it work? Absolutely. Now let me share a question that popped up in our Q&A. What success have you all had with planned giving efforts? Stephanie asked this to everybody else, and we've got a response. The culture of our church is that giving is done anonymously. So it would be out of character for us to put anything on the wall recognizing people who have given. Are there other ideas of how we might recognize or thank people who have made gifts? So I'll give you my response, and then Kirby, I would welcome your opinion. So this is a very sensitive issue, like in capital campaigns. Most churches do not put up a plaque listing donors, which is very different from when I was a kid. I remember my father telling me at our church, he said, not only would they put your name up there, they'd put the amount that you pledged every year to the church. How's that for horrifying? So this anonymity is a very careful thing. So the invitation to the dinner is anonymous. Nobody knows. There is no publication of who the dinner attendees were. That is a very gentle way to thank people if they have remembered the church in their estate plans. So Kirby, tell me, how have you dealt with the anonymity issue in the past?
Yeah, it is a very sticky one. I agree, because every church has its own culture and own personality. We at the foundation, we do a very simple brochure that we just list names. We don't list amounts. We don't break them up by category. We publish it every 2 years and just let people be aware of what gifts are flowing through our foundation. And so we would encourage churches to do some sort of just simple recognition of those donors just in a listing. And I tell you, the greatest time to make that public would be at Memorial Day or certainly All Saints Day. You can do such a wonderful litany of a service on All Saints Day to recognize the saints who have remembered the church, but then those who have passed on, and those gifts have kind of come to fruition to the church. So every church has to address this in its way that it can best utilize the resources and the human resources to help bring the gifts, but to not step over the bounds of what it would be a normal way to proceed in any given congregation.
That's proceeding delicately, proceeding respectfully, proceeding gently, proceeding with an attitude of gratitude. I think those are really the keys. And so much of what we do is like farming. So really the key to success is the planting of the seeds. So if you don't even want to have an event like we talked about, please put in your bulletin the reminder, please remember the church in your estate plans. Include in there, contact the church office if you would like more information. Kirby says that she has a brochure. I've got a generic template that I will give you that you can just plunk your name in there, and it covers the general ways that you might give. You can plunk your church's name and your photo in there, and it's just a quick review. And it's got a panel on the back where you can put your committee members' names. It's a very easy thing to do. All of us know that we need to do that. So proceed gently and plant the seeds. Ask people to do that, okay? So just remember, at any given time, 3% of your people, the research says, are ready, willing, and able to make an estate gift at any moment. 3% of our people are in the midst of estate planning. So put it in there every single week, okay? So that when it is my time to redo my will on church on Sunday, I open it, I see that, oh yeah, I should do that, okay? Constantly planting seeds. All right, we got another question. What if your church has planned to start the quiet phase of the capital campaign this past spring, but the pandemic caused your committee to put the campaign on hold until further notice, probably spring of 2021? Do you recommend launching a planned giving program while the capital campaign is on hold? Or do you think sticking to the advice of starting a planned giving program 12 months after the campaign is still the route to go? The answer, I would welcome your opinion, Kirby, but the answer I give is a farming one. I would say start today. The moment you have an open door for starting anything ever, please do it. So should I wait to plant a tree? Man, do it today. It might be 100 years before it's fully grown, but do it today. I've been meaning to plant some trees on the east side of our property, and I've been thinking about it for 2 years. You know, they would have had 2 years of growth if I've gotten going 2 years ago. So you can start today by putting that little notice in your bulletin. If you're comfortable with an event, put it in there. If you're not comfortable with an event, don't put it in. Just remember the church in your estate plans. But please start today. Now, I want to finish my answer and then shift to Kirby for her response. But when Kirby said earlier, giving promotes, it begets more giving, man, that is borne out by the behavioral economist. And he has a different term for it, but an investment in planned giving will result in a greater capital gift, and it will result in greater annual giving as well. We know that to be statistically true in a significant measurement as well. So start today. If they do remember the church in their will, they'll give more to the capital, they'll give more to annual. All right, Kirby, over to you. And then I've got our final question, and then we got to wrap it up in a couple minutes. So what's your answer, Kirby?
Just about starting now or after the campaign, I would defer to you, Dennis, on that answer. But maybe this is the time that you do a little seminar about, do you have advanced healthcare directive updated? Do you have durable power of attorney? You know, do you have that will to take care of your kids? You know, kind of soft still on the back of the COVID situation. And then do the full out launch after the campaign. But now's the time to maybe warm up people to sort of some of those end of life conversations. Maybe do a spiritual book about end of life planning that your pastor can lead. Those are just some of my initial thoughts.
That's really fantastic. Planned giving is a ministry. And when my dad passed away, having his advanced health directive was extremely important. We in the church, we exist to serve other and lift up their relationship with God. And this is an act of service. Do that exact thing that Kirby just said. Have a workshop or have a webinar. Give away the information because we all need it and we don't have it. And a church is a trustworthy source. Please proceed. Okay, here's the last one, and then we got to close. We're way over time. I'm so sorry. But as you can tell, I love this stuff. It's exciting. I make friends out of this. There's nothing more exciting than landing $1 million gift and the donor say, thank you. Thanks for making this happen. That makes my day. That's so much fun. Okay, here's our last question. If you want an anonymous gathering, can you have it in the church hall or should you have it at a restaurant? My opinion is have it in someone's home. That would be the best possible thing. Everybody loves going to somebody else's home, and don't make them cook. Just ask for a volunteer who has a pleasant home they'd be willing to share for this event. We shall bring the food in and we shall clean the mess up afterwards. It'll be easy and it will be fun. And people love this. So I've been to about a zillion of these. When I was single, I thought about buying a Tupperware briefcase because I'd go to all of these events and I'd take the leftovers home. So please have it in a home. It's more attractive. You'll get a higher attendance and people love it. Kirby, you got anything you want to say about that?
I would agree. Anything that's more personalized, even if it's a room in a clubhouse or, you know, something very personal and low key. Yes. Great.
Well, thank you, Kirby. And thank you all for joining us. It is such a pleasure to be with you. If you have questions related to this or to annual giving, we got it in 2 weeks. We've got an annual giving workshop coming up, gearing up for a fall campaign. dealing with the COVID crisis. So it's a whole new level of complexity and technology. And I will tell you, one of the trends that's coming up that you're going to have to address is text as a way to communicate and to respond, even text to give. So we've got to up our game on video and communicating outward. And so we're going to deal with those complexities. If you have questions about a capital campaign, that's what we do for a living, give me a call. My number is here. It's on the church development website. And it is part of our, when you get this set of slides in the mail, my personal phone number is on there. You can send an email or give me a call anytime. Thank you so much for joining us. Go forth, good luck, and God bless. Bye-bye.